What's up, guys? Here? Then you're about to experience Dugan Ashley early evening live stream. Wait for people to get in. Yeah, 4. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't even really know what we're going to talk about tonight. So I didn't want to do a late stream because I want to. Oh man, my hair's messed up. Hang on. There we go. Much better. I didn't want to do a late stream like usual, so I figured I'd do it earlier, and then I get some time to knock out some tracks. What's up, Abdullah? Yeah, so okay, Abdullah's asking, is there going to be a stream with the other guy that was in Iraq? Yeah, so that's that would be Johnny Pacone, and I did a recording with him. We did like a split screen experimental. You know, like I've never used fuck Discord, so we did a like painfully got into a split screen show, and then talked for like, it was after last night's stream, so I still had some juice in me after that, I guess. So it's on, you know, he's probably, I'm assuming he's gonna put it up, you know, but it's more like just like getting in there and seeing how it was for me, like learning about how the fucking Discord works, which it worked pretty well. It wasn't crazy. I have no idea. Yeah, I would ask Johnny Pacone because it's his video. I'm just on there. They were just kind of like showing me the ropes of Discord, which I'm still very unfamiliar with. So, hey, love you too, buddy. There's so I got some emails. Somebody asked me to explain the mural again. Was that not clear in the mural video? You think that was like a poor explanation or attempt to you know, understand that? What are you guys' thoughts on that? I'm curious. Did it make sense at all? Me, I'm not drinking anything. I'll probably drink some wine while making music later. That's all that I have. Probably cooking wine. I don't feel like driving. It was fun. Multi Grandpa says it was fun. Multi Grandpa. Who's Dugan in this? Who's Dugan in this stream? Anybody know? That's what King Legion says. Whom is? It could be any one of us. Any one of us could be Dugan at any given time. He's probably just not even talking, because it should say Dugan on the screen when he chats. You are Dugan. Well, good to meet you. Thanks for inviting me here. What is up, Bernie? We got Bernie in the house. Fucking Bernie. Do you guys know about Bernie Sanders? Do you guys know this? Like, so I saw a meme about Bernie Sanders a while ago, and it was like, Bernie Sanders is the Zodiac killer, and then there was like a comparison image. This is fucking crazy. So then I was like, haha, whoa, that's funny. And then I started looking into it, and there's like multiple things that actually make it pretty close. Like, number one, he's in the correct age bracket. Number two, he had the ability to travel to all the places where the Zodiac homicides were taking place, being in politics, like during college and after college. Number three, he fits the description, like ethnically, he can fit the description to an observer. Number four, his fucking handwriting is identical to the Zodiac. Like, they're so similar. Like, I've analyzed his handwriting, which is really, he writes in two different scripts. So he's got cursive, and then he's got like standard. and he hardly ever uses the standard. Like if you find his handwriting online, you'll almost always see cursive. But there's a picture where he's like writing on a sheet, like a sheet of paper on it's like on an easel, and he's just like writing on there like really fast with a pen, and he uses standard. And if you compare his standard to his Zodiac standard, they are like really fucking close. Like there's a ton of crossover between the two. Like it should be enough. Like given the number of years since then, if I was an investigator, if I was like a pathologist or something, or whatever, I would fucking say like this is a legitimate, like you should investigate based on that. Bernie Sanders also had a article written in I think it was in the Tribune from West Virginia, but I'm not sure. He was a correspondent. Oh, an animal is running around here. What is that? Weird. Maybe it's a rabbit. So Bernie Sanders wrote an article in. It is a rabbit. Bernie Sanders wrote an article in the whatever his paper was, and the article is like talking about like rape fantasies and stuff. And he basically, what's really really interesting about it is that he gives examples of like psychology of men and women. And so he's like, in his examples, he's saying like this is like for all men and all women. You know what I mean? He's like here's an example for men of what men think about sexually. Here's an example for what women think about sexually. And it's like the most extreme stuff, which is psychologically very similar to like a serial killer, because a serial killer like has a distorted perception of other people, and they make the assumption that like everybody is exactly like them. You know what I mean? And they attribute and project like their own delusion onto other people, and that's that causes like tons of that usually happens before they start killing people. Like for like years, and then it builds up, and then they're like I know what these people think, but I can't. They can't resolve the inconclusiveness of how it doesn't actually pan out, and it ends up like causing a lot of conflict in real life when you see the world that way. And then that kind of seems to culminate in serial killers' lives when they start going on like spree killing or like hunting people and shit. So it's like, I mean, his article is like talking about like how women fantasize about being raped by 3 men simultaneously, and I don't think that's accurate. He also says, I mean, I wouldn't know a female mind, but he also then describes like a man's fantasy, and his men's fantasy version is like a man fantasizes about tying up a woman and raping her. And like when you read that, it just kind of makes you go like, you're just like, whoa, this guy's fucking like running for the president. Multi-grandpa seems like a piece of shit, honestly. Is that too harsh or what? So he's a bit weird. What's up? What's up, Drew? What's up? That was kind of a mean thing for me to say. It's more of like a joke, because he was joking in here. He wanted to come out. Multi-grandpa wanted to come out and say that's pretty hot. But I don't know. I'm not really into that. So hello, welcome. I'm getting a lot of emails, and it's kind of, I'm trying to respond to them. If you get an email response back from me, it's like, hi, thanks for writing. Like, thanks. It's just because I'm probably checking like 10 emails at one time, and it's like a shitload of emails. Yeah, you like that shit? Yankee Boogle track? You mean a Spank Your Booty? I haven't made it yet, but that's one of the ones I'm gonna release. I was gonna release that. I'm working on it like right now. Ish. I just gotta extend that because it's so simple. It works really well for so like when I make music, they typically never get done. Like unless I'm trying to put out a song that's like a complete song, like like Holding AK was like a complete song, so I did a music video, so it's to go to completion. But like most of the songs that I work on, they just end up like staying in an unfinished state for like years. And I'll just, when I feel like it, when I have the emotion of that song or whatever, and want to think about it, then I'll get back in there and then I'll start working on it, and then I'll just continue and continue and continue and continue, and I never really finish it. And then usually they'll morph into a new song, and then I'll turn it into like a B version or whatever. Welcome KMH02. Weird weather out here because it's hot. It's like I'm getting cold from the AC, but then I turn it off and get hot really quickly. That's strange. You mentioned feeling guilty when you were working with social media for companies. Can you explain what made you feel guilty? That's from Wooter. Yeah, I can. So, you had the you guys understand like the initial, pretty much everything except Facebook, or not everything. A lot, like YouTube started independently, and then as soon as it was this is a good idea, then it like lost control pretty quickly. But once social media began consolidating and coordinating between them, which because they're all the same people, they all rub shoulders and for everything. And once I started to see that happen, I could kind of see the writing on the wall. I didn't know like how quick or how extreme it was going to get. So I wasn't going to go like, if I would have in 2015 like started to make videos like this, we'd just be really, people would be freaked out. You know what I mean? Like now shit is so fucking extreme with no explanation or continuity between these batshit crazy events that people are experiencing every day and witnessing, and it's the divide between what the supposed status quo narrative is and what they're actually seeing is so great that people are willing to think about new ideas. And so it's appropriate now, but in 2015 it wouldn't have nobody would be people would just think I was a psycho. So I kind of made the judgment call not to do it, but I was uncomfortable enough to want to get out of it. And on the that's for social media, and then on the on the monetary side, I do not like ideally okay, let's say that if we're gonna have an economy with money and exchange money, then it's like the model, the logical model would be to work less for more money so you can have more time off. But what it really is that it never stops. So like the more money that you make, the more things that you're supposed to buy, and it just they kind of like stay at the same ratio. It's just like a perpetual consumptive cycle. And there is there's hardly, I mean, you can do a home business, right? Like I've had businesses before, so you can do like a sole proprietorship or an LLC or something, but it really sucks because like once you understand tax code and shit, like if you've read IRC, then like if you actually understand it, then you realize that these it's part of the way that like I started to recognize and understand like what the economic situation is just by reading IRC. And yeah, exactly. Sean Puffy Combs, Mo Money, Mo Problems. Or is that Notorious B.I.G.? I don't know. One of the two. By reading IRC, you can get like, as long as you can retain or like understand, read critically and understand, basically paints a map like in your head when you're reading it. You can get a visual on like how the cycle of money works through internal revenue code. And like, so through doing like businesses and like setting up nonprofits and shit, I learned all that shit, and it really like there's no way to misconstrue the way that things are set up as being on the up and up, or as being non-exploitative. Like it's entirely exploitative of people. And so like once I could understand that, then it became like this, like nothing was good anymore. You know what I mean? Like yeah, I could go out there and try to make money for myself and maybe like not have a boss or something, but it was it took away any want for it. You know what I mean? Because it's like I don't want people to be exploited. You know, and I don't want to be a part of it. And it's like a self-reinforcing system where it's the more that you make, the more you reinforce the system. And you know, so it naturally put me into the new perspective of like I want to make the least amount of money that I can to survive. You know what I mean? Like as minimal as I could. The only thing that I would like now would be if I could get a black market job where I just get paid cash under a table, so I don't have to have like a bank account and shit. But you know, that can be difficult to do. At least with a level of stability. You know. So that's kind of my explanation for that, right? So a gentleman emailed me about the yeah, no problem. A gentleman emailed me about the mural, and I thought I explained it well, but if he's having difficulty understanding, then other people are too. And I'm trying to remember how I explained it so I can avoid explaining it that way. But essentially, what you had to break it down is that you had like a massive effort to coordinate the 9/11 anniversary in 2002 at Ground Zero, like the ceremony with all the survivors, and you know, you had like national politicians there, you had president there, you know, obviously like the entire New York state government, and then you had like a comedian put up a giant mural, which he didn't sign. The comedian's name is Yakov Smirnov, and he has an interview. He has an interview where he talks to a woman after this. This would have been like, it couldn't be that far off from 2002. But she interviews him about the mural, and like he kind of gives the history of how he like made it, and then he says at the end, he talks about like, she was like, and you didn't even take credit for it, and he was like, no, I didn't take credit for it, and I wanted to put up anonymously at first, and then like after a few years I realized like, okay, he said that he wanted to be selfless about it, but I don't believe, you know, like in my judgment, I don't calculate that. I calculate that he was worried that he would put it up and then people would understand what it meant and be upset, and so he didn't want to be like associated with it, you know, immediately when he put it up. He kind of wanted to put it up as like an anonymous thing, and the way that he made the mural is very like, it completely blends in with like a government mural that you would make to have some kind of you know, totally dry, you know, like lame patriotic expression that wasn't very patriotic. You know what I mean? It had like traditional American flag, Statue of Liberty, and I don't know, something else. But it's just very, it looks like the cover of like a school textbook or something, you know. And then the quote is like in like some kind of like sans font or something. So it's just very generic into the background. Where it gets weird, like other than that, right? Like other than that, the actual quote on the mural, like what makes this is like what ties it all together. So the quote is, the human spirit is not measured by the size of the act, but by the size of the heart. And so, you know, like as soon as when I saw it, like the way that I found out about the mural was watching some, you know, people made cell phone video and shit like in New York at Ground Zero, you know, after 9/11 and in 2002, where they're just like walking around the street, like almost like, you know, it's like it's just their camera footage off their phone, like Periscope or something, but it's just a YouTube videos. And so there's just a guy like walking around making a video silently, recording, you know, this would have been like probably after the ceremony. So the mural just like stayed up for a while, and he walked around and then he caught it. And so I saw it, he like held his phone up to it for a second. And then I saw it and I was like, and I was thinking, like when I first saw it, I was like, man, why? Like, because I imagine in my head, I was like, if I lost like, you know, my mother or father, like the ceremony wouldn't be that meaningful for me because I would feel like it was just like corporate expression, you know what I mean? Because the mural was so dry. And I was trying to imagine like how how people would have felt that were at Ground Zero for the ceremony, and if they would have been like under you know, if they would have ended up being more bereaved than comforted due to the like sterility of the ceremony. Like very, you know, it was just a very like, I didn't think it was, you know what I mean? And so that's why I was like looking at these videos, and then when I saw the mural, and I was like, it's kind of a stupid mural. It's not even correct, you know, like the size, like the human spirit is measured by the size of the act, not the size of the heart. So they got it fucking backwards because they're, you know, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, you know, they obviously don't think very deeply, and so they're just like throwing some words up there. You know, it didn't have any signature or anything at the bottom. And then like, and then I thought about it, and I thought like my brain automatically went to, I was just like, man, because I started to get frustrated, you know, like, and this is all in like immediate thought. I started to become like frustrated and disillusioned with the idea of like how many people would have had to prepare the ceremony, and how it would have been like hundreds of people like double checking everything, like making sure everything was fucking tight, you know. And then, you know, I was really bummed out that like there was nobody that caught it, you know what I mean? Because I was imagining like if I would have been on the detail making the mural, I would have like caught that shit and been like, you know, like that's not really the right saying, you know, like maybe we shouldn't put that up, you know what I mean? And that's like how this whole thing started, was by looking at it and seeing it and saying like this is incorrect. And then I went and looked up, like, I don't remember how I figured out that it was Yakov Smirnoff, but you know, somehow or another I realized it, or maybe it was like an unrelated event later that made me realize it. And once I figured out it was Yakov Smirnoff, I right away, you know, recognized that this is like a Jewish man. And then so then my curiosity got piqued, and then I started looking at Yakov Smirnoff. And Yakov Smirnoff is a comedian that's entirely known for his shtick being like word recomposition, which is called like a chiasmus. And it's where you take two words and put them out of place in order to like send a message, you know, so that a person like the conflict between the two words being backwards makes you think about the relationship between the two words, you know what I mean? Therefore making you think about the topic or the domain of the message. And what we're talking about is like a way to, like when a person reads and just reads a statement and they're just reading words and then it immediately gives a conception in their mind. Well, what we're talking about is like a two-domain thought. So you're like reading it and just seeing what it says, and that's like one dimension. And then your brain goes like, wait, these motherfucking words are backwards. And then your brain has to think like, what would it be if it was the opposite way around? And you'd be like, that's correct. Then your brain, you know, thinks about the relationship between the two words and like what exists between them. And this is like the other dimension, right? Like this is like something that isn't normally present in critical reading. And so, you know, like once I realized that he's known for a chiasmus, then it became like, okay, what kind of message is this person sending? You know, like obviously there's a message. So then I researched him more. He also has a PhD in psychology as a comedian, and he's a he's a Russian Jewish immigrant. And you know, the mural is very large. We're talking like the facade. It's the size of the facade of a, you know, like a large industrial, you know, like an office building in New York. So we're talking like hundreds of feet. So you got to imagine how much money and time it would take, especially for an individual, to make that fucking sign, right? So I don't think that Yuri did it alone. I don't think he made the sign alone. But you know, I don't know exactly who made it. But I do know that, like, what I can tell from it, like what was immediately deduced was that, you know, he's putting up a sign and he's Jewish, and so there are people that are Jewish that are at the ceremony that see the sign and understand what it means. And you can further deduce that by, like, if you're familiar with Judaism, it deals a lot with acts. Like that's the entire physical interface of Judaism is like your acts, like committing acts. So that'd be like mitzvahs, things like that, right? Like that's the entire like philosophical, worldly expression of Judaism, right? Like in physicality. And so it's extremely appropriate for something that would, deal with that to also talk about acts, And so what the message means is that, for example, like I'll use the old lady crossing the street. So if you're standing on one side of a street and looking across, and then you saw like an old lady with a bag of groceries, and the bag of groceries was heavy, and she was struggling with it to go across the street. Well, like you might, depending on who you are, you might feel like, that person like needs help or whatever. Like you want to do an act, you want to do a kind act. And so like a person, depending on how shy they are, might have to think about it a couple times, right? Like they might like watch her and then be like, well, maybe she'll get it and she'll be good. And then she'll like struggle again. They'll be like, I don't know if she's gonna get it. And then they'll like struggle again, and then it'll be like, okay, I gotta do something. Or they drop the bag, and shit goes everywhere in the middle of the intersection, and then you're like, okay, I gotta do something, Or maybe you don't. But the point is that like there is no act of kindness or like expression that can be performed in the mind, like if you're just thinking about it, right? Like if you just feel like you're good, like you want to do good, but you don't actually do good with acts, then it's meaningless. Like it has no meaning. And the bigger picture of what this is that there are, like your actual mental imagination is a separate world than the physical world. And what I mean by that is that even though you have thoughts, and you can think something and be motivated to reach out your hand and do something, and it feels like there's continuity between the two because of your perception, like the way that humans are, like how we can do amazing things, like do fucking like kick flips and shit on snowboards or whatever, and it's instantaneous. Like the reactive expression of the thought is instantaneous. But the reality is that once you consider it, these are entirely separate worlds, and they have no crossover whatsoever. Like your thoughts and mental state are yours alone, and nobody can like access them. It's an entire world of its own, and it's really more you than your physicality, because the physical world is like shared, right? So like if I reach out my hand and someone else's hand is there, then we're gonna touch hands, and then we're sharing contact in physicality, the physical world. The mental world isn't really like that. Like you can connect with somebody by like thinking about the same thing at the same time or something similar to that, but there's no direct, you can't like directly reach through and feel contact between the two. So the mental world is not only exclusive and separate from the physical world, but it's not able to it's completely individual. It's not shared between people. They're entirely exclusive individual worlds that have no crossover. Well, this is exactly what Yakov Smirnoff is talking about. He's saying that the you can think you can he's saying, by mixing up the words, he's saying that it doesn't matter how big your heart is. The only thing that matters is your act, which is very like once you understand this, it becomes ominous of like how to apply that to the situation of 9/11. And there's a lot of ways to do it. You could say, well, Yuri is saying that I mean, it's almost impossible to take it any other way than like you brought this on yourself. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense, or do I need to explain that? Okay. So I hope that makes sense for whoever sent me the email. It's basically like, on one hand, it's a challenge of like, you brought this on yourself, and on the other hand, it's also an invitation to do better. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's nefarious. You know what I mean? Like nobody go out and like canoe Yakov Smirnoff or anything. But it's like it is confrontational, but it's so intellectual that I mean, obviously, like nobody in the United States saw it, or at least I don't know if anybody else has saw it. I've never read anything about it, or like read a blog post or any analysis of it anywhere. You know what I mean? It's like this fucking black hole vacuum event that was gigantic. But essentially, he put up a riddle in front of the entire United States, including like the presidency and public television. Like every major channel was there, and so like people, and it was the first anniversary. So like millions of eyes saw it, and like I know that people saw it and understood it, but I don't know if anybody that the message was meant for saw it and understood it. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, Wooter says the only reason Jewish atheists are still considered Jewish is because they lost believers due to Christianity and could never stand for that. You'd have to be more specific because I don't understand what you mean exactly. People worshiper asked me, who is it intended for? I'm assuming you're talking about the mural. The message is intended for you, like anyone that's not Jewish. That's who the message is intended for, in one respect. It's also intended for Jews, and this is where things get interesting. The message is considered for Jews in multiple domains. So in one part, like in Judaism, you have the mitzvah of not insulting widows and orphans. So if anyone saw that with their sight that's Jewish, and thought about it like, yeah, the Edom is gonna fall, the United States, like they're getting their asses handed to them now, and like, wow, that's so mighty. Then that would be like a test, right? Like that would be like a test of like to see where your heart is, but for you alone. I mean, not you alone, you and somebody else, which we're not going to go into. But that would be like one respect, and the other respect would be like the opposite of that, like where you look at it and you'd say like, yes, this is like unfortunate. I hope that humanity can rise, and be who they are. Koji, Comic-Con's never coming back. I've just got a P90 with me tonight in the car. So I don't know if that does that explain it? I have no oil filter on. Nope. Okay, what was the other question on here? Okay. So Wooter said a man considered a Jew when his mom is a Jew. They have created this law because they were losing believers to Christianity. How else are Jews still called Jewish when they aren't believers? Well, this is a really and then Automat says now Automat says he's a Fed. Who are you talking about? You guys need to be more specific in these comments, like especially if you're gonna be like, number one, it doesn't matter if somebody's a Fed, but number two, if you're gonna be like saying somebody's a Fed, it's gonna apply to the person that's right above you if you don't say who it is. Who are you talking about? And just so that you're aware, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we have any Feds in here. Oh, no worries. Okay, it was a joke. Okay, but who are you joking about? I just want to go tease whoever it was. I wanted to get in on a joke. I'm not beating up on you. I'm just trying to understand what the fuck is going on. So you guys get all over the fucking place in here, and I think it's scattered. Okay, so we had some discussion in here about Jews, and particularly like definitional, like what is a Jew. So I could tell you what you'd see on the internet, or I could tell you what I believe. So a Jew is a vessel pivot point to that doesn't really matter if they're religious or not. It's like a bloodline. It's a bloodline, vessel that is used to as the point of contrast for like every other human to like reflect against in order to define everything. And it's a very specific, like it's that is the reason that it doesn't matter if a Jew is pious or atheist, and that they're still considered a Jew. Now, in a simple form, like a Jew would just say, well, if they're once a Jew, always a Jew. So if they're born a Jew, then they're always a Jew. And that's kind of like the simple, like shortcut answer. But the real answer is that, like in Judaism, it is a, like not in the way that Jews look at it, but in the way that like you would understand it from reading Tanakh. Jews are a, like, because contrast definition is like the mechanism of creation of, like, you can't have light without dark. You can't have you can't have like a color without a contrast, right? Like if there's no contrast, like let's say like when you paint a wall with a color, you look at it like it's one solid color, and that's how you think of it in your head. But that's really like an illusion. What you're really seeing is like a ton of other colors made by the imperfection of the wall and like shadow, like micro shadow cast across the wall, which is actually like, to your perception, is like a ton of multiple gradients of colors, and that defines like the color, like what it's actually there. If somehow you can't do this in physicality, but if somehow you could have like a perfect sheet of identical color, your eyes actually like wouldn't even see it. You know what I mean? Like it would just be invisible, because to render anything like through the senses requires contrast. And the same thing is true about like everything. Like electricity works that way, right? Like in order to have an electrical charge, you have to have positive and negative. And so like like in the Tanakh, like in Torah, even though Jews may not understand this, or some Jews, like I'm not going to make the assumption that Jews don't understand this, but many Jews do not understand this, that like the Jew is like a vessel to contrast against everything else and define define identity, you know. Now that brings us into a really good point. So I received another email. I started getting some emails about people or from people that seem to be like really misunderstanding the stuff that I'm saying. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking about Christians. So like I was born in a Southern Baptist family. So like I'm familiar with Christianity, and so is most of the Western world, you know. But the thing is that Christians are not running the planet. You know what I mean? Like Christians are not running nation states, and are not are only like tangentially responsible for the things that are going on in the world right now. Like they are executors, but they're not like the designers. And so it's important for people that because Judaism is such a guarded concept, like Torah is such a guarded concept. It's important for people to understand it, simply because it'd be like trying to understand the world, like 700 years ago, trying to understand the world with no understanding of what the Holy Roman Empire was, that was like organizing and controlling the world. And this is the entire issue with how this is happening, and why nobody's saying it, because they can't understand, because they're not aware, they can't understand the background of why what's going on is going on. And so if you're if you guys are asking questions, the things that I'm answering about Judaism are not they're responding to questions from people. So people have these questions, and then I'm responding, and I'm trying to give them straight and honest answers. This is not I'm not doing a unit on explaining Judaism so that you accept Judaism or something like that. That. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But I'm not I really got the impression, because there's multiple people. It's not just one guy. It's multiple emails of people that really seem to not be listening to what I'm saying and not understand the context in which I'm discussing this stuff. I'm trying to help you guys understand the world better. I'm not like making a judgment on what is right or wrong. Does that make sense? Kevin says I should write topics and then turn off comments. I'm planning to do that, but this is just this is like a quick stream before I go work on music, just so you guys could get a chance to like roll some shit over in your head. Yeah, I would. Yeah, it'd be great to have a rabbi. I mean, I'd fucking interview anybody. It doesn't have to be a Jew. It could be fucking anybody. But if a rabbi wanted to do an interview, like that'd be fun. It'd probably be difficult. Like I have a lot of difficulty talking to rabbis in real life. You know, like one-on-one with nobody around. So, you know, I don't really think that they're that interested in doing that. But they're welcome to if they like. What else? What else should we talk about? What should we into here? We still got some time left. We're at 41 minutes. What do you guys want to know? That's you know, what's important? Why don't you guys cut through all the bullshit and like think about what you really, if there's something that I can think about with you, we can bounce around and think about it and try to discover something. Are you asking me if you should protest armed or not? How should you organize for the Boog? The beauty of life? Well, we got a lot of things here. Okay. Was there a new executive order for vaccines that just came out like in the past 24 hours or something? Or are you talking about the prior ones? Okay. So we're going to talk about a couple things here. Number one, we're talking about, we got a lot of stuff of like the call to action, right? So the call to action was just like an attempt to gauge interest in like trying to organize to do something to wake up like the public, right? So it's not really a protest. It's just, well, I guess it's kind of the same thing, but it's really more of creating a spectacle that has to be noticed about the topic with the vaccines, so that people can be reassured of their, you know, distrust of the issue. Which the MSM right now is like completely doing a very poor job of synthesizing comfort of like, yeah, don't worry about it, you're good. Like everybody wants the vaccine, you know. Everybody wants a fucking vaccine, and if you don't want one, you're a weirdo, you know. And that's kind of like the message that the MSM is trying to push through, and it's not working that well. But what's missing is that because of censorship, like people are really losing the ability to like have organic interest in media that they make, you know, through social media. That's because social media is like completely fucking gimped right now, you know. Like they're just fucking censoring everything, which is really unethical, highly unethical. And it's going to result in quite a backlash. Do vaccines save lives? I do not believe that vaccines are even like a logical idea, because the entire point of viruses and shit is to apply, you know, selective pressure. And so like you know, you like ideally, like right now in the world, things are so fucked up because human beings are being provided all of the resources that they need to survive by state structures that are not allowing them to express their like purpose in life. You know what I mean? Where a person has to work all the time and has such little energy and downtime to even think about, you know, like who they want to be and think about humanity. They have so little time to do that it's suppressed, and you know, they simply give all of their energy into the service of money, you know. And that is, you know, that is entirely the issue with like you know, the urbanization of all the societies as they fall into the first world. You know, like they're just like towing the line stepwise. They're like hamsters in a cage, and it's very like it's very it's very deceitful, and it's also very um, hoity, you know, because it's the assumption of like you know, it'd be like if you were going out and like grabbing a wild bird and putting it in a cage. Like that's one thing. If you're like making a serious effort to go out and cage every single bird that is in the world, you know, lock them up in a cage so they can't fly, it's hoity because they're not considering the consequence. You know what I mean? Like they're not considering like what the natural consequence is when you fuck with uh, you know, creation's order. And that is like, you know, that is the that is like the really big problem with it. Now on vaccines, it's very similar, right? It's very similar. And same thing with eugenics, and same thing with like transhumanism. And one of the really interesting things I think is that, you know, all of these things, like obviously like eugenics is basically entirely Jewish in its conception, and same thing with like infanticide. You know what I mean? And it's really ironic to me because, you know, like the first prohibition in Judaism is idolatry, and you know, it discusses image, like creating image. And in Judaism, the tradition is like very physical and sterile, where they're, you know, looking at the prohibition on idolatry as like you can't draw like a figure, like you can't draw like a human form, or like make a sculpture of a human form. And what's really interesting about this is that when you go into Genesis for Jews, they discuss the you know, the passage in Genesis that says, "Let us make them in our image." You know, let us make them in our likeness, which is plural, which is very unusual. It's like one of the anomalies of the Tanakh. You know, is that people usually remember that passage as being like, you know, something like, you know, made in God's image, like in His image, something like that, right? But it doesn't say that. It says us. Like, let us make them in our image, which is very interesting. But then in Judaism, like if you learn about how rabbinicism interprets the term image, they interpret it like it's not talking about physicality. You know what I mean? So they interpret it like it's not the human form, like the body, because that can change. And so it's you know, it's actually like all of the things in between physicality that make a person, like the way that they get life, the way that they die, the way that that they process information, the way they learn, the way that they use all the senses, and the like emotional construction, like the logic order of emotion and things like that, and drive also. And so what's really interesting about that to me is that it seems like the, you know, like there's a contradiction here in that, you know, on one hand it's like you know, obviously a person can make a form of a human and then see God in it. You know, what I was saying was that what's ironic about the way that Judaism idolatry is that, you know, the things that are pretty much universally prohibited in Judaism, like making a sculpture of a person, that could be done while having the conception of God in your mind the entire time. You know what I mean? And if we're talking about like image, to create an image of, then, you know, the standard of like the Genesis definition of image and the idolatry definition of image are not concurrent, you know. And a closer exact example of idolatry would be like manipulating the order of recreation through eugenics, or manipulating creation by like mutating genes and trying to play with the actual things that like make up a person, their construction, like that, by standards in Judaism, should be like the highest prohibition of idolatry. But what you find is that it's like, basically entirely Jews that are, attributed with starting eugenics and running with it and developing it since its inception, like since the earliest 20th century. And you still have them now entirely riding on the cusp of that wave. Like they're pushing the ball forward in that realm 100%, like everywhere. And that's not all Jews. I'm not saying that's all Jews. I'm just saying that like the people that are doing that are Jews. I'm not saying that every transhumanist or eugenicist is a Jew. I'm saying that like they're wantonly overrepresented in it and have been the entire time and have guided the entire process. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm not. I'm not referring to Zionists. I'm referring to Jews. Some Jews. You're probably not going to find an Orthodox rabbi like doing eugenics. Between vaccine, well, a vaccine is obviously like that's like a selection pressure, right? It's like an artificial selection pressure, because you're taking something like, well, it's even more if you release the virus. Like if we're talking like a natural virus, well, the first thing is that they don't really even understand vaccines. They think that they understand them, and they don't, and you know that because they're constantly learning additional information about it. And a person that worked in epidemiology would think that like they would view that as like, well, yeah, it's because we're learning and improving all the time. But the reality is that it will never be done. Like you can't. It never ends ever. It's infinite. And so like like the advancement of study is infinite. And so like they're not really like getting better. They're just viewing it in different ways and adjusting the model all the time. And it's just a form of like playing with creation when they're doing vaccines, because if you provide, like if you introduce the virus in the first place, then it's like you're causing it. But if you introduce a vaccine for a virus that's already there, then it's like now you're altering the course of like nature for a purpose that you really don't understand. I mean that like philosophically, right? Like the basic underlying model is that you make the assumption of like, well, life is, everybody should just live and nobody should ever die. That's like the basic premise of like medical science in the modern era. It's like no one should die. It's like the Team America thing where it's like, I promise I will never die. That's like their philosophy. It's like nobody should ever die, and then we're just gonna build our medical model off of that. And it's it's like it's not the right way. And yeah, I don't think that nobody should be like it's really dangerous, eugenics. But because you're influencing populations, like it goes hand in hand in everything. Just like economics can be used for eugenics. Like if you have a managed economy where you're injecting money into specific social groups and like putting regulatory barriers on certain social groups, or like regulatory control on races and stuff like that, like it's just a form of eugenics. It's like all, you know what I mean? Like these are all tools out of the eugenics handbag, and it's I can promise you that it's not a favorable thing, for our existence. Yeah, so eugenics, like the history of eugenics, you have Darwin, in the 1800s, like the end of the 1890s, and then you get like, what is it, Walter Galton, Sir Walter Galton, Sir, yeah, I think it's Sir Walter Galton, Sir Galton, and then he's the one that modifies the evolutionary theory model and applies it to people. And then from his work, that's where you get like the rapid expansion of early American eugenicism, and it just like expands, and then it just morphs over time and into the, like into Planned Parenthood and shit like that. Positive and negative eugenics, like both ways, right? Where it's like you're either preventing or you're like encouraging or discouraging, or you're like castrating or chemically castrating, or some method like that. But I do find it really ironic. Like, to me, it's really ironic that the Jews are like so heavily involved in it, and that it's very, I mean, I feel like I did a pretty good logical explanation of why it should be a higher priority of definition of idolatry, but I don't know. Maybe there's like too, like, maybe I was not going direct enough about the explanation, and it made it confusing. But basically, like in certain areas of Judaism where they make a deep effort to define image, they don't apply that to the definition of image in idolatry. Yeah, and transgender, right? And transgenderism. This would apply to that too. Like influencing society with social engineering programs to cause higher prevalence of like homosexuality and transgenderism. It's the same thing. Okay, this is F4 Phantom. Do you think the NSDAP was a prime example of eugenics gone right or wrong? I find their experiments interesting. I don't like so I don't believe that there's like a good way to do it. Like I don't think that it's it's like it's such a leap when you consider the domain of eugenics, of like what people are fucking with when they're doing that. It's just very, like, they're skipping ahead of a lot of really important things logically before they would ever get to the point where eugenics would even in a lot, like, not even including like goodwill or humanity, like human dignity, like not even considering any of that. Just like getting to it, like before you do eugenics, you might want to have like food taken care of for people. You might want to have like this whole problem with money taken care of for people. You might want to have the problem with like resource scarcity taken care of for people. You know what I mean? And then like if you had all that, now you can get to the point where you're like, is eugenics right or wrong? You know what I mean? But to just like jump ahead just because you can, it's like fucking sticking firecrackers in the sun to see what, or it'd be like if you made like thermonuclear warheads that were like fucking 100 times bigger than whatever we have now, and then just like launching them in the sun to see what happens. You know what I mean? It's just like maybe there's some like unintended consequences that will result from that. I don't know. Yeah, that's true. That's true. D. Zanzer says LGBT are also apex consumers, and I do agree with this. Like, I agree that I wouldn't define it as LGBT. I would define it as like the more socialized you are, the heavier you consume. That's the correlation. And LGBT is heavily socialized, and so it appears that they're like, yeah, I mean, they are apex consumers, but their socialization and programming, like their compliance with social programs, is the primary motivator, the influencer of that, like the thing that causes that's responsible for that. Okay, so Zach S says, would really recommend Yuri Bezmenov. He explains what's happening in America. So I hear this a lot, pretty much in every stream that we're doing. I have people that refer to Yuri Bezmenov. And so when I watch, I've like watched all of Yuri Bezmenov's stuff, you know, like all of it. And I do not. Number one, I think he's dishonest because I think that he knows a lot more than what he's saying, and I think that what he is putting forward is a like a misguided and untrue like account of what is really going on. And I think the reason that he's giving it is because he's trying to obfuscate the like the reality of how big what is really going on is going on. And most of his interviews were in the like 80s, you know, like he was a defector. He was like a Soviet defector, you know, supposedly. I guess there's no way that we could really validate if he was actually in the position that he was, but he claimed to be a Soviet defector in Canada, I believe, right? And 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 the stuff that he says, like if you really break it down, like if you tried to draw it in a like when you watch the video, it's really his interviews. It's really easy to watch it and just like go with the moment and be like, oh yeah, okay, I can kind of see that. I can kind of see that, and they all add up, and then it's like you're like, you're like, wow, that's what's going on. But if you like actually, if you actually like lay out his claims and put them in order, they're just kind of like spastic and don't have a lot of continuity or sense. Like there's like serious logic errors and lack of like, I mean, they're so vague and like they've got a lot of problems. Yeah, let me. Abdul asked me to scroll to the trans question. Okay, so Abdullah asked me, Dugan, do you think the increase in trans people is done to reduce birth rates? And I don't think so. I think that like so trans people. Could somebody look up the rate, like in like average rate in a population, like a first world population, should be somewhere around like 0.01 or 0.02%. Somebody could look that up. The 0.6. Is it really that high? It's 0.6. I'm kind of surprised if that's accurate. I think it's lower than that. It's increasing. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess I could see that. So, like, okay. So here's the. I guess I should give a disclaimer in case we do like trans people in here or gay people watching this. Like, you should understand that this is just like trying to give a logical examination of what is going on in the world, and that there's not a, like when I say this stuff, it's not a judgment. Like even if you do something that I don't agree with, this isn't a, or that I wouldn't do. This isn't a judgment of like your value as a life here on Earth. This is just a judgment of attempting to explain, you know, what is happening in the world. So you know, for like I view the phenomenon of like homosexuality to be, you know, inherently linked to, you know, like social construct and influence, whatever that composition may be, and like in an adaptive state, constantly adapting, which is very versatile for a human being. Like a person can go through significant adversity and a challenge and have extreme adaptation, even like one lifetime, you know. And then you have like a roll-up effect for like subsequent generations. The phenomenon of homosexuality or transgenderism to be actually like a social program guided, like a social engineering guided, the purposeful, we're talking here, right? Like designed and thought about and critically formed as a program. I consider homosexuality and transgenderism to be a, you know, both a social program that's introduced in the population and encouraged through like media and institutions, and then on the individual side, like the actual person, I view it as like it's almost like a response, like a stress response to this pressure. You know what I mean? Like it's like they could. I don't think that they're really like I think the homosexuality and the transgenderism comes before the social program. Like I think it comes from from just the loss of rights and the like control, like the fucking iron grip of like trying to control society and individuals that is perceived by everybody. Like even like it doesn't matter who it is. Like people perceive it, and it's a stressor. And I think like the natural reactive state of a person is to rebel and to like run away and to shut down parts of their like their consciousness. And I think that that's an adaptive trait of a person that's being taken advantage of by like promoting this stuff. But I think the promotion is really more for everybody else besides homosexuals and transgenders. So the promotion is more for interfacing with the general public. The actual phenomenon of it is of like transgenderism and homosexuality is more of like an individual response to stress in a controlled society. Although you do see, I mean, you do see it does naturally occur like in populations. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that that's like, I'm not saying that that's what is the that it's that way all the time. I'm saying that that's like that's what's responsible for the, you know, because obviously it's, you know, it's mandatorily socially celebrated by institutions, you know, so they're like directly promoting it. Now what should be understood is two things. Like after I say this, these are caveats. So like number one, like in terms of my own personal philosophy, I view it like completely analogous to this. Like a human being, you know, in order for a human being to, you know, for humans to exist on Earth, procreation is necessary, right? Obviously, right? So like, in the in the way that a government is structured, it's a like a steward, or it's supposed to be in traditional government models. It's supposed to be providing some kind of reinforcement and support for its population. Like the government wasn't there first, and then the population comes at the leisure of the government. It's like the people are there first, and then they form for the purpose of service or betterment of their lives. They form the government. So the government should be a reflection of that. And so like the government already overstepped when they like stole the domain of marriage for regular people, because marriage is something that is not the domain of a state structure, you know, unless they make it and the population accepts it. Because marriage, you know, is certified to the state, even though they're not really like, you know, turning people down and shit, it's just the fact that it is in their domain. Like they could deny it, you know, realistically, if there was a reason. It means that it's like you don't like possess your marriage. You know, I'm talking about like straight people or, you know, heterosexual people, you know, and it's not up to the state to it, and they don't have, that's not the domain of the state. And so that was like already wrong. And the reason that it got societally accepted is because of the you know, income tax. Because as soon as you have income tax, now there's a financial incentive to get to allow the state to recognize marriage and put it in their domain in order for you to receive tax credit so that you can save money. You know what I mean? So just as like all of the other problems and issues of society can trace back to money, so does this phenomenon of the state opening up and swallowing the institution of marriage. Now, it wasn't good for heterosexual people, and it like it's not a good, it doesn't have a good effect. It's not like a positive effect on a population. Now, when you take it and apply it to like homosexuals or people that aren't traditionally like thought of in that model of like why the state is even providing the service, you know, logically, now you get to the point where it's like, you know, it's like gay people should never have wanted it. You know what I mean? They should never have wanted, like, if anything, gay people were more free when the state wasn't absorbing their domain of authorizing their marriage or not. You know what I mean? So like they don't think of it, like most people don't think of it that way, but that's the reality. Like they were actually more free when like they didn't have state recognition. They just don't know that. But because they also now, you know, the reason that they pushed that was so that they would also get tax breaks through the you know, IRC. You know, like, and so it's entirely monetarily driven again. on the the aspect of it that's, like how you would view something like morally or whatever. Like it goes like this: like in society's concern, all like matters of engagement between people, like in how opposite sex for procreation, is totally revolving around the objective of procreation. you know and so like society doesn't have a prerogative that's natural at all to like provide services for somebody, for example, who may just like to, like if a guy's like, I like to take the light switch cover off my wall and cram my dick into this light switch box. Like it's great, like, but that doesn't help us with procreation. So like we're not gonna, like, there shouldn't be there shouldn't be like an entire destabilizing social and institutional effect that takes money. Like it's already fucked up in the first place that they even swallowed up their domain and bogarted it. But then like now we're going to expand it to you. You know what I mean? Because you like to stick your dick in a light switch. And it's like this is like the entire problem. Like this is analogous to the issue with like the state's involvement in reproduction in the first place. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think it's a complex issue, and so people have a really difficult time understanding it. But it's really that simple. The simple thing is that the state shouldn't be involved in it, but the state's prerogative and actual, their actual motive is to just like swallow any fucking domain that you people will give them, like all of humanity, like any person in society. If you tolerate their absorption of some domain, then the state will happily take it. Because once they take it, then they can incentivize and de-incentivize using economics, which they control. You know what I mean? Which is a facet, like a power of the state. And so I hope that explains that, and I hope that I was clear enough to understand that, like, when I'm saying that, it's not like it's from my heart, and it's not like a judgment or it's not something where I'm like, I'm not telling you like shame on you. You know what I mean? That's not at all where I'm coming from. And I hope that came through in my answer to that. What else we got? Any other questions on that? Domain or something else? Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, this is great. This is perfect. Okay, we got our next topic. This is extremely important. So this is from Brian Cubes, and this is a really good. So Brian Cubes asked me, will they transition popular understanding of Pride flag to Noahide flag? And the straight answer is yes, absolutely. But people are not going to have any understanding of what I'm saying, so we're going to go into this and explain. So if you're not familiar, there is a rabbinic tradition of Noahidism, and what Noahidism is a subcaste religion for Judaism. And so it's essentially like a lower value subordination to what would be the Jewish world government, post-Messianic era from Israel. And this is not me saying this is just rabbinicism. So like when the Messianic era culminates and you get the reinstatement of the Sanhedrin and like the Third Temple, then you'll get like Noahide law will become the law of the land for everyone that's an alien, which would be like every other country, right? And so like the Noahide law, there's 7 of them, and in Noahide law, there's it's very simple, because out of the 7 prohibitions, if you violate any of them, the punishment is beheading, and by decapitation. And the beheading is used for pretty much everything except for like certain situations where like a goy would have sex with a Jewish woman, and then it's a very specific circumstance, and in that circumstance they would be stoned to death. But every other violation is decapitation. And this would be, so like in the way that this would work out in the nation states is that you would have like the nation states would get defeated in the Messianic War, which is like, incoming right now, or about to start. And then during that Messianic War, which would be very long, the nation states would be destroyed, practically, like in terms of the ability of representative government to exist. And then you would have economically reinstated top-down economic energy coming through the states, just like it is now. And but it would be dependent on complying with Noahide law provisions. And so the idea would be that the court systems that are already established, that are already around the world, some parallel of that would be there, so it wasn't too dramatically different. And the thing that would change would be once you're found guilty of one of the 7 Noahide violations, then you get beheaded. And the person that's doing the beheading is your county, just the same as if you would go get convicted of a crime right now for a speeding ticket or whatever. It's just that all these other superfluous things won't matter as much. They'll probably go to economic fines. But the 7 Noahide laws, which include things like theft, idolatry, which is they consider the big thing on idolatry is that rabbinicism considers Christianity idolatry. So all Christians, including Christians that are evangelical and highly supportive of Israel, are there's no division or confusion about this. Anybody that accepts the Mishnah Torah as the post-Messianic law, under Law of Kings, which is practically most Jews, then Christians will be beheaded, of any type, of any sect of Christianity will be beheaded. And Christianity doesn't understand this because they're not willing to learn about Judaism, and so it's a very both ironic and unfortunate situation where you have massive amounts of money being poured into Israel from particularly Christian groups in the United States and in South America, and they don't have an understanding that they're actually going to be executed at the culmination of this thing. And if they don't convert, if they don't accept Noahide law, which would include denouncing Christianity, and other things that are prohibitions on there would be theft and let's see what we got on battery here. 10%. Okay, we got a couple minutes, and I gotta get a charger. So other things would be theft. You'd be executed for theft. You'd also be executed for sexual immorality, which includes homosexuality. So all homosexuals will be decapitated when this goes into effect. And and then the other things would be courts of law, setting up the courts of law is a part of Noahide law. It's the 7th law, I believe. And then you also have you can't rip a limb from a living animal, or flesh from a living animal of any type. You do have to believe. I think you have to be you can't be atheist as far as I'm aware. You at least have to accept the conception of Abrahamic, God, and so that's a long explanation to try to be thorough about Noahide law. Now, the symbol of Noahide law is associated with the rainbow, because Noahide law, there's 7 of them, and in the model of representation of a rainbow that they're using, it's also seven color rainbow. Now the LGBT flag was created by a man named Gilbert Baker in San Francisco, California, and this would have been the 1970s. And Gilbert Baker is a Jew, obviously, and the flag went through different iterations, and it's not really there's a public explanation of why they went through different color sets and numbers of colors, but it does appear that it's just an obfuscation to hide the fact that it's Noahide flag. You know what I mean? And so the rainbow flag, the LGBT flag, is is an introduction of like Noahide symbolism into society. And the other thing that Noahide law is known as is universal law. So like the concept of universalism, and universalism is like a primary um, uh, conception that's associated with the subcaste Judaism of Noahidism. And so like, you know, uh, and this is a very, even though this stuff sounds really extreme, you should understand that, like there are presidential declarations recognizing Noahide law that have occurred since like Ronald Reagan, you know, if not before him. I just recall Ronald Reagan is like one of the earlier ones. Like George Bush, all the Bushes have done it. Trump and Obama have done it repeatedly, and that's actually like Education Day. So if you go to like presidential proclamations for Education Day, like particularly like George Bush 1991, the presidential proclamation for Education Day, you will find text in there that's referencing like Noahide law, and this is because rabbis go to the White House every year to reinforce and continue to promote this. And so at this point in time, it's expanded beyond the presidential office and presidential proclamations and has moved into the Senate floor. So like it on the Senate floor, they open the day with a Senate prayer, and they rotate because it's they look at it in the Senate as like secular, and so they allow rotation. And so when you get rabbis up there, they're especially particularly when they're from associated with Chabad, which is a it's really like a messianic type of association of Orthodox Jews. But the when you get rabbis that are from Chabad in particular opening the Senate prayer, it's pretty much always going to have references to Noahide law and how they're the universal foundation of all law, including the United States law and religion. And so like this is happening regularly. This isn't like a single occurrence. This is like been happening for like 2 decades. So there are many instances of this, and if you search for it, either in YouTube you can find videos, or you can find them in like C-SPAN archives where they're recording Senate sessions. So this is like something that should be understood and should not be secret. And it's really Chabad has done a very direct effort to both promote it as but under the deception of like it doesn't feel very like straightforward, because they don't tell people what it's about. They just kind of really focus on the universal aspect of Noahide law, but don't discuss what would be like the decapitation. And this is how it's represented in the U.S. Senate. But the reality is that it has everything to do with decapitation, and that this has been established by Maimonides in his work, the Mishneh Torah, in like 1100. Yeah, Chabad Lubavitch, which is a particular sect of Orthodoxy, and it's primarily focused on like post-Messianic era. But hold up, I'm gonna get a charger, you guys. You guys hang out for a second. I'm gonna get a charger so my phone doesn't die on you. Hopefully, I'm gonna turn down my screen brightness. You guys can chew on that for a minute. Sorry about that. I had to go get a charger. So now I wanted to just finish up. Um, I wanted to finish up that explanation of Noahide law and how it's pretty like shocking, I think, for Christian people when they understand this, like when they come to the realization that this is no bullshit. Like Dugan's not making this up, or anybody that brings up the topic, because it sounds so extreme and like fantastic. You know what I mean? Like it's a fantastic claim of like the Jews who the evangelical Christians are so nice to, like already know that the Christians are going to all be beheaded, and that they kind of like keep that a secret. You know what I mean? And don't share it because it's more advantageous, right? And so like uh, the way that you could now I've tried in this description to be as honest and fair in the description and accurate as it can be, judged based off of what I've read through Jewish texts. So like I haven't tried to um, like add an interpretation or judgment of like that, like like a moral judgment on it. I'm just trying to although I do have my judgment of it, but that's not a part of this description. So the point being that I'm trying to fairly represent the concept and explain it to non-Jews so that they can understand it. And if I did that in like a judgmental way where I was like talking about how evil it was, then it would taint the like the information to be shared, right? And so that's why I'm doing this in like a very, I'm trying to be extremely conscious about how that I don't add things or ideas in there that I haven't read. So I'm really like racking my brain on this. So if you wanted to know more about Noahide law and to validate or verify this stuff, you either search for like general writings about Noahide law on a crawler. But if you wanted the source of the interpretation of Noahide law is from Maimonides. That's Maimonides, Maimonides, which is a Greek name for a Jewish philosopher in the 1100s that made a Kodak for, like Torah and Talmud, to combine and interpret law in a navigable order that people can look at like a code book and be like, this is what this says, this is what this says, and relate them, because a lot of that information is like expanded and kind of like floating in the text all by themselves. And if you want to know the specific part that discusses this, it's a section of Mishnah Torah that's known as Law of Kings. Law of Kings. That would be like the source material, which would inform any interpretation that you would read regarding Noahide law. That's like the origin of the interpretation. So I hope that makes best English version of Tanakh. It's tough to say. Like if you get a Tanakh and you're not seeing like, if you're not seeing like the term goyim in there, then it's not accurately translated. Like you should be looking for like, you should open it up and see a lot of really unfamiliar words in the translation that like you have trouble pronouncing and shit. And if you don't see that, then it's not accurately translated. Now Tanakh is like much more expanded. You've got like Torah in there. You've got like a lot of different books are in the Tanakh, all combined, and so it's not like like Mishnah Torah itself is very stepwise and organized. Tanakh is like that's like a holy book, so it's like it's very big and it's a lot of stuff in there, and they don't necessarily there's special relation between how it's laid out, like it's a purposeful the way that it's written, like the organization of it, but it's not stepwise where you can just like start reading it and going through it and then just like logically find a lot of stuff, right? Unless you read it and have a good memory and are able to like remember the reference and like remember approximate location and go look it up, you're gonna have a difficult time. But the source, like pretty much, so Maimonides, to give an idea of this, like Maimonides is like informed Jewish law and like standard since like Spain. like since the, practically probably like the 1400s. Like he wrote Mishnah Torah in like the 1100s, and it took a little bit for it to really like, catch like fire through the entire, world Jewry. But most people interpret a lot of Mishnah Torah as like the standard. You know what I mean? Like for all things in Judaism. And then there are some Jews that don't, and they are a minority. There are a minority of Jews that do not accept Maimonides' interpretation of post-Messianic law. Most Jews believe that, accept and acknowledge the post-Messianic law, which would include Noahidism and decapitation of Christians in particular. So that's the bit on that, and that is the like the story behind Noahide has to be understood to understand the LGBT flag and its history through Gilbert Baker, who's Gilbert Baker's currently deceased. Like he died in the 2000s. Okay, so if a fan asks, will people become aware of this? No. No, they won't. So like, not only the concept of Noahide law to Western thought is so incredible that it's difficult for a person to even accept that it's real. It sounds so extreme that like most at least like Americans don't believe it at all. You know what I mean? Like they think that it's like a far-fetched idea, and it's not at all. It's like considered, it's a part of like the most scholarly work of organizing law of non holy books. And it's so unknown that like Congress is not aware. You know what I mean? So like the Senate is like, logically because of the implications of like decapitating Christians and gay people, and then the constitutional standards of the United States in its inception, and then how it's been modified to now. Both of those dimensions of how people look at the Constitution, either it's like origin or it's where it's at now, both are in like, they're like mutually exclusive to permit like Noahide law execution, like decapitation and shit like that. Like obviously, it's a constitutional, totally fucking goes up against the constitutional standards. So, that logically should cause some problems with it being promoted in the Senate. But people are so unaware of it, and the politicians don't care, and they're so bribed that it just doesn't even matter, And so like they. And it's kind of a complex topic, and there's not, other than Judaism, there isn't like a religious organization. I mean, I guess they all kind of are, but they're not. The religions aren't really like as organized as like the Jewish post-Messianic era in terms of like world government, right? Like the other ones are kind of like a little bit more abstract and a little bit more like, we're waiting on God to come and fix the world, and then we, everybody goes, under God. Well, Judaism is more like, in the post-Messianic era, it's like humanity makes a world government. But their interpretation of it is not, like that was how I just described that. That would be like a perspective of a non-Jew in the United States now, how they would see it. The way that a Jew would see it would be like what I just said is only half true, because it doesn't consider like the will of God, right? Just to be clear, just to be fair in terms of like Jews don't view it as like an evil thing. They view it as like a commandment of God. If that makes sense. I just want to be really specific and fair, because we're getting into like religious topics, and I don't want to I don't want to speak in I don't want to speak in like a way that would be, offensive to anybody. Just because it's like religion, and if I start like giving judgment on religions and shit, then we're gonna like really like go off the rails here. A Hebrew type beat? I wouldn't know what that is. Is there Hebrew music, or is there just incidental Hebrew music? So Joe Geezer says could see AC being big Noah High enforcer. Could you? Who's AC? I actually like that. That's funny. I'm not gonna say what it is. Let's see. Joe Geezer says could see AC being big Noah High enforcer. Who is AC? Oh, Antichrist. Yeah, yeah. So there is, like in Revelation, there is a vision, and I believe I'm pretty sure this is Jesus. You guys can look it up and give me the actual passage if you could, like the number, so that people can reference it. But there is in Revelation there is a passage about a vision that Jesus has about like Christians being beheaded in the end days. Okay, so this is like so Eric says the idea of a man being the quote Antichrist is a Masonic conception. I can't comment on that because I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting topic. Now I will say, what I will say is, okay, and then we got a viewer helped us out. Revelation 6. Revelation 6, I'm assuming, is the that's the passage that's going to discuss decapitation of Christians from a Christian prophecy. Thank you, Abdullah. I really appreciate that. And then we have another comment here, and this goes right along with it. So we have a viewer that said temple being rebuilt has to happen first, and this is actually correct. And so what we're talking about here is the third temple. So if you're unaware, like in Jewish history, there have been 2 temples built, and the current one is like in terms of the state of Israel believes the site is the Temple Mount. And the Temple Mount is underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. So there is a large Muslim mosque in Jerusalem that's built on top of the site of the Temple Mount, where the state typically, I mean, there's debate among where that actually is in Judaism, but the state itself, like the most powerful voices at this time in Judaism, like secular Jews and everybody, believes that it is that site. And so there's an automatic conflict between Muslims and Jews in terms that you have like a very it's the farthest I believe it's like the farthest or the most holy mosque besides like Mecca, if I'm not mistaken. So now what's really interesting about this is that it's guarded, like the mosque, it has security provided by the Israeli government, so it's not autonomously controlled by Palestinians. The mosque is controlled by the Israeli government, and during periods of conflict or like protest or riots or anything like that, it's very common for the Israeli government to limit access to the mosque. And so this is like a recurring thing through the history of Israel having control of that of Jerusalem. And if you go to Al Aqsa Mosque, you're going to enter through like metal detectors and shit. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guards there and shit. And recently, like in the past couple of years, there have been like a series of like fires and shit, like in the guard shacks and things like that. And people suspect, there's been speculation that it's an attempt to like, tangentially burn down the mosque so that it can be like removed by fire. Now, the really interesting thing that isn't necessarily related to this, but an interesting current event is that recently, we just talked about yesterday. We talked about the burial site in Iran, which would have been like Persia, the burial site in Iran for Queen Esther and Mordecai, which is a holy Jewish site, but it's in Iran, so it's not really like in their control at this time. And it, like in the news, they reported like through I saw it through a tweet from a Jew that's in I think it was like a U.S. government guy, and like possibly like a delegate to Iran, and I saw the tweet, and it they had a fire in there, right? And so it's automatically it seems that it's attributed to Iranians like maliciously setting a fire. Like that's kind of like the accepted narrative. And I don't know, like I'm not saying that's not true. I just don't know, right? Because Iran's kind of like it's not like I can just like walk over there and see it and see for myself. I'm kind of at the mercy of whatever people want to claim. So there are a lot of possible ramifications of that diplomatically and politically between Iran and Israel, or Iran and diaspora. And like one of the most direct, if you can imagine, of like all the things, because it's a direct reciprocation if we assume it doesn't even matter if it actually happened or what happened, but if someone in Israel that is in Israeli government operates under the assumption that like Iranian nationals being Muslim like purposefully burned this burial site because it's under Iranian control and not Israeli control, then the reciprocal of that would be for Israelis to burn a a Muslim holy site in a territory that they control. And obviously that would be the Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? And it also has a significance to it because it's like something that's like known to be, if you go to Israel, there's a really good YouTube channel that's called Guy Corey Schulter, like Shulter, I believe, and he's like a secular Israeli Jew that lives in Israel, and he goes around and like you basically like give him Patreon donations, and he'll take your questions and go and like ask Palestinians and ask different types of like Jews, like Orthodox Jews and secular Jews, and whoever whoever is related to the topic, he'll go and like ask divergent opinions on things. And there's not, I mean, it's not all Israelis or all Jews, but there's a sizable portion of Jews, both in like the secular perspective and the Orthodoxy, that view the Al-Aqsa Mosque as like occupation, like a spiritual and religious oppression of the Dome of the Rock, and that it shouldn't be there, and that it should be removed. And so like, this is like a tension that's been there for a long time. Could somebody tell me when Al-Aqsa Mosque was built? Okay, and then I got a correction on the Revelation. It's actually the Revelation discussing beheading in the Bible in the Christian Bible is Revelation 24. Yeah, Guy Corey Schulter. So the YouTube channel where you can look up like interviews with Israelis, and Palestinians is Guy, like G-Y, Corey, Corey Schulter, Schulter. So it was built. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque was purportedly, according to Wikipedia, Al-Aqsa Mosque was built in 705 AD. For all you people that aren't aren't familiar with CE. But so like, it's what's significant about the event yesterday that you will see a retaliation that's significant about this. So in Islam, like what's that? The guy. Okay, so here's what's really significant about the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So in Islam, like a common opinion, and I'm gonna be unable to pull up like reference material for this, but I've read in multiple places over the years. There's a common opinion in Islam that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built over the Temple Mount in order to serve as a canary to sound the alarm for the like the coming of the Antichrist, because the Islam also has the tradition of the Antichrist, and so in Islamic thought, which is not completely monolithic, there is a like the situation with like Mahdi and I don't know, Abdullah, are you familiar with Islam? Abdullah is Iraqi. That's why I'm asking Abdullah if you didn't know that. But I don't know if he knows anything about. He might not know anything about Islam. I don't know. Okay, so so in Islam, Abdullah says he probably wouldn't know. So in Islam there is a tradition of like when the Al-Aqsa Mosque falls, it's going to trigger basically like a multinational Islamic raid of Israel. And that would be like, if I'm not mistaken, that is like the invocation of the like the Mahdi raid of Israel, where the Mahdi like goes to Israel and like shoots everybody, or kills everybody. I mean, if it happened nowadays, we're using rifles, so that would be like the current form of like what would happen. And this is also like this is like described harmonically in the book of Ezekiel. So like there are prophecies that are like in Judaism, the way the prophecies are dealt with is that there are certain ones that are fulfilled, there are certain ones that are not fulfilled, that are considered to be necessary to be fulfilled, like they will be, and then there are ones that are like dependent on Jewish acts and observance of Torah, and regulation, like Jewish law. And so, the Jews view, like the Jews aren't typically, I find, like aware of this, but it's really interesting because it crosses over between, like you get the crossover, especially like in end times, you get significant crossover between the Christian Bible and Jewish end of days and Islamic Antichrist. And the Muslims refer to Antichrist as Al-Dajjal, like Dajjal, I believe. I believe that's the correct spelling. So you have Al-Dajjal. Also, Christians should be aware that Muslims also believe in Jesus Christ. So like Muslims believe that Jesus Christ is going to return to defeat the Antichrist. If you weren't aware of that. The Muslims believe that in the end times, like once the Antichrist manifests, that Jesus Christ will return at Damascus and then lead the Mahdi, if I'm not mistaken, anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but um, they believe that Jesus Christ will return at Damascus and lead the Mahdi in like fighting the Antichrist, if I'm not mistaken. I probably shouldn't speak on that because I'm not terribly familiar with it. And you should also, like in terms of like end times, you should also understand that, like, because there are 12 tribes in Judaism, and that like the lost tribes were expelled into the nations like way earlier than the diaspora. There's like they're unknown. So there isn't an authoritative accepted interpretation of who the lost tribes are. And there's tons of theories ranging from everything from like Europe and like Germany and in France and in Ireland, like the tribe of Manasseh being in like Ireland, and the Ephraimites being in like Europe and like Britain and like fucking everywhere, United States, So there's like, but nobody knows, right? Like there's no authoritative monolithic interpretation of this, like it's accepted, you know what I mean? Because nobody, it's something that in Judaism is solved like in the end of days during the Messianic era, because part of the Mashiach's like role is to unify the lost tribes and bring them back to Israel, and that's like that happens concurrently with the Aliyah, where the actual tribe is descended from Yehuda, like the modern Jews are descendants of Yehuda, like bloodline Jews, and so like the Davidic Mashiach is descended from Yehuda. And System 3 asked me, Doug, could all this DNA collection be a huge search for identifying who was a lost tribe DNA? Yes, it can be, because there are issues with DNA and like Abrahamic interpretation of like bloodlines, and I'll get into that. But like the more, let's see. There was somewhere that I was going to go with that before I saw that, but I wanted to hit that. But the so what's important to understand is that essentially you have like in Jewish messianic interpretation, like among Jews, there are multiple timelines, and they are dependent on what's called a tikkun, which is like a global Jewish rectification that is accounted for through particular acts. And this is why Judaism is focused about acts. And so you have like the worldly expression of Judaism of mitzvah, or like commanded acts. And in Judaism, there isn't, like, some of them are kind of like like the commandments obviously are like intuitive, but the like some of them are not intuitive, and there isn't, that's like accepted as like like the Jews view it like, well, we're not supposed to know it because we're just not permitted to right now. And so like later on we'll be permitted to understand why we've done this, but for now, like we just commit the act, commit to the act, and that's the law. And then that will, this is like the culminating into rectification, which results in the redemption, which is the the Aliyah, like return of all Jews to Israel, the end of the spiritual exile, because currently like Jews are in a both a spiritual and a a national exile, like two different domains, right? And in Judaism, like in popular Judaism, like among secular Jews or Jews that aren't like terribly into like reading into prophecy and stuff, like you get like most Jews, like a common Jew, a popular opinion among Jews is that the Mashiach is Mashiach ben they call him Mashiach ben David, like, which is kind of, that's like the way that word would be said, right? But Mashiach ben David, right? Like the Davidic bloodline of Jews out of Yehuda. The Jews view the Mashiach as being that, like, mostly, like most Jews think that. And so like when the Mashiach ben David would come, that would be like when you would get, like all of this culminating stuff for the end of the exile and the reinstatement of the Sanhedrin, the building of the third temple, all this stuff. But that, there is a tradition that is old that, goes all the way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So like when they recover the Dead Sea Scrolls, you get, like you had in the 16 and 1700s, you had the the conception of like Mashiach ben Yosef, which is a different tribe than Yehuda. So it's a lost tribe. So like Yosef is like the Yosef from the story of Egypt, of like serving under the Pharaoh and being like cast into a pit by Yehuda, and his brothers, and then being like sold into slavery. And then he hides, he comes to power in the alien nation of Egypt, like directly under the Pharaoh, because he's favored by God and he has like a misfortune. And then like it's important to understand this, because to understand the conception of the Messianic era, because there's a distinction in Jewish tradition where like the condition of the rectification and the timing of like the timing window of when the Messianic era commences. So like the timing is an issue that's completely under God, like has no influence by man. The rectification condition is dependent on the mitzvot, which are acts by men. And so this is the foundational mechanic of Judaism in its execution, is like acting on the mitzvahs. And so like if the rectification isn't complete in a way, then it requires the Mashiach ben Yosef to come prior to the Mashiach ben David, and the Mashiach ben Yosef dies. And it's actually like, I interpret the reading, like the book, I interpret it as, I interpret the book as, like the prophecy, I interpret it as like the Jews kill Mashiach ben Yosef, so they kill him. Now there is a misinterpretation among Christians where they like attribute Mashiach ben Yosef with being like the first coming of Jesus, but it can't be, because of the there are certain like the Mashiach ben Yosef is really elusive in terms of like its definition, but it's defined enough to rule out that it wouldn't be Jesus, because it's like a conquest type figure. It's like a direct, like entirely focused on disruption of the world. It's not like the who is this guy? This is, you guys are ridiculous. Okay, so the they're having like a there's like a nerd LARP going on over here on the side. It's like an entire like like a fake story going on with people pretending to be people. So so where was I? What's important to understand is that like esoteric Jews like are aware of the concept of, like very aware of the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, and the common Jews are not. you know. So they only know about Mashiach ben David usually, and it's probably like now that the Messianic era is really close, the awareness of Mashiach ben David is probably a little bit more, you know, it's probably like spilling out there a little bit more among Jews. But like this is so it used to be like in the 1600s and 1700s, the source material for this understanding, I mean, it is referenced in Tanakh, but it's not like well interpreted, and so you get like sages that write peripheral work of you know, Jewish holy texts to determine like the conception of Mashiach ben Yosef, like defining it through passages, like taking passages and then drawing a map and being like, this is a separate person. Okay, they're from the line of Yosef, you know, and so to make things even more complicated than they already are, the the like so you get two Mashiachs that come, right, like one after another. One, the first one will, you know, prepares the world condition for the second, and the second one completes the redemption. And it's like, you know, highly debated on what the timeline is on that. Like we're talking, you know, 100 years or like in the same lifetime or whatever. And then and there's actually technically, if you want to really get into it, there's actually 4 Mashiachs, because you have reciprocal Mashiachs for the other, like for Esau has a Mashiach, and I think, is it Ishmael? I think maybe Ishmael has a Mashiach. I'm not sure, but there are two other reciprocal Mashiachs, and there's also the prophet Elijah, and there's like a priest also, and this is all like so it's extremely, the Jewish end times is a lot more complicated than the Islamic and Christian end times. Let's see, what else can I say about it? So like the Mashiach concept, like I was trying to explain this in an email to a viewer, but like the messianic concept is in Judaism is defined as like, you know, esoterically it's defined as like a tree root system. And so like you have like basically like harmonics of like souls almost that have like a potential and then like a kinetic manifestation in people. And so like this is where like bloodlines become significant in Judaism. So like the Mashiach ben Yosef and the Mashiach ben David are believed to be present in every single generation, like for you know, since the creation of Judaism. And that like it requires timing and the condition of rectification, like people that are like 90% of the way they're like executing it, but they can't be released because of the condition of the world. And then like it's like how do I put it, like it's often defined as like a tree root, you know, and it's actually like in the prophecy, is described as like a root from Jesse, and a root, you know, like a root or a sprout, you know what I mean? So it's analogous to like a tree, underground tree system that's hidden, and then it like pops up and manifests the actualization of the Mashiach. But the concept is called Mashiach, which is like a spiritual, it's like a spiritual you know, transmission from another world into the physical world, into the vessel of people that maintain the capacity of receiving the Mashiach. And this is the messianic concept in Judaism. And what's really interesting about it is that it has so much crossover with both, you know, with other religions. You know what I mean? like it fits right in really with like Christian end times. It fits right in with Islam. Hey, Mark, welcome. Okay, so that was my attempt to try to explain as respectfully as I could the like the contrast between where they relate. So the reason that we're discussing this in particular is because of answering questions. But the reason that we're fixating on like Judaism is because it's the it's related to the current events. You get what I'm saying? So like we're speaking on it in relation to like you know the perspective of you know the current condition of the world, right? Like uh, so we're you guys we're at 2 hours, so I think that's probably good for tonight. It's a pretty heavy topic. We went in and answered some email questions, and yep, and we are going to wrap it up. So we'll do I'll probably do one tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna be turning some focus on the music, so I'm gonna try to go work on some music now. Yep, you guys have a great night. Thanks for watching. Love you.